turn off our camera as we move to our next session, which is from Greta. So Greta, again, welcome. And you are going to take us through critical elements of continuous planning from your perspective. So over to you, whenever you're ready.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. My name is Greta Hager, and I lead the financial planning and analysis group for MassMutual. I've been fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, to lead FP&A transformation in a couple of large organizations, and I've learned so much along the way. So today I'm going to build upon some of the comments made by the previous speakers. I'm going to talk a little bit about continuous planning and some of the critical elements that must be in place in order for you to have a successful continuous planning process. So as Simon Sinek says, it's important to start with a why. So why do we want to have an effective continuous planning process, and what's the purpose? Our ultimate goal of all of this is to provide key decision makers across our companies with actionable information that allows them to make the right decision at the right time. There's a few key elements in this phrase that I really want to hone in on. So first, the ultimate customers of this work are key decision makers. So any insights that you generate should be geared towards that customer and what decisions they need to make. Second, there's a timing element in there. That insights have to be fast enough for them to be able to use the insights. It doesn't help anybody if they receive it, 3 months, 6 months too late. They've missed their window of opportunity. And the insights need to be precise enough, and they need to drive the right decision. So if they come up with a result that's illogical or has the company take the wrong decision, then that's not good either. So let's dive a little bit deeper on the next slide with some critical elements that need to be in place in order for this to be successful. So let's focus on the who. A continuous planning process needs to be aligned to who is actually going to use the results. Connecting back to some things that both Hans and Ji-Yoon said, it all starts with having a clearly defined strategy with a short list of clearly defined metrics that enable you to measure a successful outcome of that strategy. So for each element of your company strategy, there should be a person in your organization who is responsible for executing upon it, and they will have decisions that they have to make along the way. So a continuous planning process should develop outcomes that line up to the decisions that they're going to make to ensure that the results of the model are used and that they're actually driving action. I can't overemphasize enough the importance of a short list of metrics. The fewer metrics you have, the more focused your organization will be, and the more focused your model will be. I've worked in organizations where there was literally just one metric that was important. And in those organizations, they were hyper-focused on executing upon that metric. I've also worked in the extreme opposite, in which they had a tremendous amount of metrics that they all deemed were important. They were all equally important. And what happened? The inverse. The organizations were unfocused and the models were big and clunky, and it was difficult to derive exactly which action should be taken at which time. The last point I'll make on this slide is that key decision makers have to have trust in you and your relationship with them and the model results in order for the information to get used. So moving on to the next slide. Let's talk about the model itself. As a reminder, we're looking for speed, reasonable precision, and insights. And it's critical that you have a clear understanding of the variables that move your metrics, leading indicators for those metrics. And both your variables and your metrics have to be reliable and credible. The variables should be connected to your business model. There's a classic example out there of a paper that was published a couple decades ago that suggested that butter production in Bangladesh had the tightest correlation to the S&P 500. I think it was something like a 99% correlation. Now, the statisticians, when they published this statistic, it was true, but it was actually intended to be a joke. And they've commented many times over the past couple decades that People are continuously asking for their data to build a model to predict financial markets, but there's no, that variable is not connected. So it's important that the variables that you use are directly connected to that business model. Now let's talk about speed. It's important to have a connected model. So what do I mean by a connected model? All of the elements within your model should talk to each other. So think like one long formula that if you update one assumption or you update one variable, then everything else that's connected to it automatically updates. I think we've all worked in a world in which you've got various independent models that are connected to each other via one linked Frankenstein Excel spreadsheet. And that may work in some areas, some companies. But in larger complex organizations, that type of modeling environment is just too clunky to be fit for purpose or be fast enough to be usable. One thing that I want to emphasize to you as you're building your model is to keep it simple. I'm in the life and annuity insurance industry, and we create at times some complicated products. And so we constantly face this challenge where it's far too easy to overly complicate a model and create almost a black box model. And once you have that, the more black box it is, the more difficult it is to get decision makers, key decision makers, behind the results and trusting what you say. The same can be said for too simple. All of this needs to be supported by a technology solution that enables real-time collaboration, from various model owners, assumption, input owners, which will allow you to do crowdsourced planning. And you also need the capabilities for you to share the information and the insights and the analytics in a mechanism in which those results are at the fingertips of the people who need it the most. Moving on to the next slide. So what happens if those elements aren't in place? Without a clearly defined strategy and a short list of metrics, both you as the model creator and the planner, the owner of the planning process, and the decision makers will be unable to focus on what matters most. And I'm sure we have all experienced what a lack of trust looks like in either the results or you. It's the death by 1,000 questions, the endless requests to reconcile data, in which you never get anywhere. Without a clear understanding of the metrics or the variables that move the metrics, you will end up with illogical results or business leaders that don't trust your results since you don't understand their business. Without a connected model, that's supported by a fit-for-purpose technology solution, you're not going to be able to deliver the results or the insights fast enough for them to be used in decision-making. So missing any or one of these critical elements basically results in insights that aren't actually used for decision-making, which is a real problem. That's the ultimate purpose of what we're doing here.